Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about, something that it can be a little frustrating dealing with questions, but it's because people don't really understand or think these things through, or they simply do not have the background knowledge to think these things through, and that's okay, so I'm going to explain it to you guys. So, when we talk about novices, intermediates, advanced lifters, and so on, people in the comments will say, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. How would you classify me? And it's like, well, I don't need to classify you. Number one, there's charts for that. Of course, then people will look at some of those charts and go, they're based on body weight, and I weigh this amount. You're telling me I need to lift this much weight to be at this level? And it's like, yeah, on multiple exercises, a lot of the stuff listed. It's like, yeah, we do, but here's the thing. Unless you're fat already, you're probably nowhere near the body weight where you're going to need to be to reach that level. In other words, some will say, well, I weigh X amount of weight. It wants me lifting this much. It's like, but are you going to weigh that amount of weight when you're at that level? You don't plan on making any gains. Like, you don't plan on having more muscle. And if you don't have more muscle, you're not going to be stronger. I mean, let's be realistic. What is study after study after study after study after study after study after study show? Lean body mass, muscle mass is the number one factor in determining how strong you are as an individual. Not saying, compared to someone who's shorter than you or different leverages, right? Shorter, taller, for you personally. 90% of your strength gains outside of the first few weeks of training, which are a lot of neural gains, or maybe some of the first weeks when you max out if you've been doing only high reps. Okay, when you set that aside, 90% of your strength is determined by how much muscle you gain. So do you plan on gaining 15 or 20 pounds of muscle? Like let's say you weigh a certain amount of weight, you gain 15 pounds of muscle. Are you going to weigh the same anymore? And dudes are like, well, I'll just cut down. And it's like, yeah, you're not going to keep all that muscle. Okay, but then we still come back to that point, You need to hit those things for that new weight. If you're all depleted because you're ripped and you can't lift anything, because most drug-free ripped guys struggle to lift anything, then, well, you're still not there, are you? So that aside, that almost needs to be its own topic, the whole thing of the weight end. But we come over to this, and I would point out, does it matter how you classify yourself? These are not hard lines. It's an entire spectrum. So when you look at novice to intermediate to advanced, there's a flow through there, right? And if you go to the other extreme ends of that spectrum, you're going to have untrained people completely, and you're going to have elite lifters. Okay? But here's the thing with that spectrum. It's not I have to clearly define myself in a category. Oh my God, I'm hit advanced on this one lift and I'm still like low on the intermediate on the others. How do I classify myself? Oh my gosh. It's not a big deal. It's a sliding scale. I mean, if we really wanted to get crazy about it, we could break those charts down into 3 tiers of novice, 3 tiers of intermediate, 3 tiers of advanced. There's 4 or 5 of them. Okay, but does it matter? Do people understand why these things exist? Okay, let me explain why these charts exist. Charts exist because people who are in the novice range, notice I didn't say novices, just in that end of the spectrum. Okay, and this is why strength is going to matter in a minute too. They're on that end of the spectrum. What's up? Means you can make linear progress. All right, if you're on the novice end of the spectrum, as long as you are eating and sleeping decently, it doesn't even have to be great, just decently, and a lot of people fail on that, your lift should be going up every single week. On a weekly basis, you can make linear progression. If you aren't eating enough, you aren't sleeping enough, or you might even be training too much. Okay, do we understand where we're going here? As you shift towards the intermediate end of the spectrum, in order to continue to make gains, we oftentimes require, number one, a little more training volume. And notice, It's as we shift in that direction, it's not a hard line. Later novices start experiencing this. You start to benefit from more volume. Novice lifters don't need much volume. True novices, a lot of them want to do 3 times the amount of training they need, and then they still don't eat enough, and they wonder why they don't gain anything. It's very simple. You don't need that much volume. You really don't. To maximize growth, right? Okay. As you start getting closer towards the intermediate part of the scale, the spectrum, you're going to need a little more volume and a little more volume to see optimal growth. Okay, what else do we start to notice? As we shift into the intermediate, we start benefiting from a little more exercise variation. It starts to become more useful for hypertrophy because we're getting stronger and volumes are going up. Guess what? We accrue overuse easier, right? We need a little more variety for both hypertrophy. Of course, that fits in with the volume. We need a little bit more variation to avoid overuse because we're doing more with heavier weights, okay? This is why it matters. It's just as we're sliding in that direction, it's not a hard cutoff. All right, as you start becoming closer to advanced, what happens? You're starting to get stronger. Okay, an advanced lifter, even if they don't do heavy singles, their progressive overload's been pretty high to get there. They're using a lot more weight for their 10 rep sets. Okay, you might have an exercise that as a novice you did 95 pounds for sets of 10. You're doing 225 for sets of 10 now. Okay. Some exercises it might be 315 for sets of 10. You get on machines and some of them they're 1,000 pounds for sets of 10s, depending on the machine. Tonnage is going up. It starts beating your recovery up more. The more advanced you get, the more you have to start really looking at mitigating the fatigue of training. You have to start looking at, I can't come in and just train endless amounts. If I do, I'm going to have to eat more. I'm going to have to up the dose, bro. All sorts of stuff. As you get more advanced, your programming needs to look more closely at fatigue management, how each workout flows into the next, because your recovery is going to be easily compromised. Plus, you still need a high volume of training because you're not a novice anymore. Your ability to recover from those volumes of training becomes important. Starting to look a little bit at stimulus to fatigue is where conjugate and stuff really shine. Okay, because it's easier to get beat up. Simply because you are stronger and you're moving a lot more tonnage per minute in a workout. And we still have finite recovery resources. Okay, this is why it matters. And the stronger you get, the further this goes. So in other words, people say, oh, so as soon as you're advanced, you just have to do this. Well, no. As you get more and more advanced as an advanced lifter, these things become more and more pronounced. Okay, it's a sliding scale relative to your strength, your absolute strength, usually relative to your structure size. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.